Thank you to Judita for pledging on Patreon. Hello and welcome back to the channel and Vlogmas. Although today's topic is probably not the most Vlogmas friendly, but someone on Twitter asked for my opinion about this Reddit thread that talks about how a hairstylist called the cops on a deaf woman and her hearing friend. And if learning about deaf awareness or just plain old reaction videos or anything like that is something you would enjoy, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads, since I am trying to upload throughout the weekdays for Vlogmas. And when I did my first read through, I had a lot of various opinions, so I'm gonna go through it again very closely and we can discuss. Am I the asshole for getting angry at a hairstylist who called the authorities? This is absolutely wild to me. I, 18F, am back from college and recently went to a new hair salon with my best friend, 18F. Gemma is deaf, was wearing a Gallaudet shirt. It says Gallaudet University School for the Deaf on it, and wanted to go blonde. Because of the fact that everyone has to wear masks, she can't use her lip reading skills and instead uses her phone or uses sign language. I do have a video all about, I have two videos I think, one or two videos about the difficulties of being deaf and going through the pandemic with people wearing masks. Wear a mask if you want to know more. Talk about it right there. We went to get our hair done together and I decided to help her out and show the new stylist what she wanted with her hair and explain in detail how she wanted her hair done. So far, from what I'm reading, this almost seems like babying her friend, but we'll discuss it more later. Let's continue. Did I sort of hover? Yes, I did. Glad you admitted to that. I noticed that the hairstylist was getting out the wrong things, and I went over 3 times to tell her while Gemma sat there quietly, not knowing what the hell was going on. The stylist started to act really strangely and started to talk to Gemma, snap her fingers near her ears. That's one way to get your fingers broken. I'm kidding. Don't commit violence. But you might at least get a slap from me if you do this if I don't know you. And even if I do know you and you're doing this at my ears, you might get a slap. And finally said she was taking a break and went off to the back room of the hair salon for a few minutes. At this point, Gemma and I decided that the service was and that it was time to go. Before we could leave, the hairstylist came back and literally kept us there. She made excuses, started talking, and stalled and prevented us from leaving. The cops arrived like 10 minutes later, and Gemma and I were separated and I was taken into one area. I was asked a few questions and I answered. I showed them pictures of us as children and our Instagram and Snap stories. I called my dad and the cops understood everything. It turns out that the hairstylist had assumed that Gemma was being human trafficked because she was catatonic in her chair. She was unresponsive. She seemed agitated by waving her hands around. That's called sign language. And I was doing all of the talking for her. The cops left and I went out there to scream at the hairstylist. I used some choice words, called her some mean things, and because it's a chain, I forced her to call her manager so that I could watch her get fired on the spot. I was extremely angry and I told her that she was the stupidest bee in the world for all of the drama. Am I the asshole for screaming at the stylist? We left with a bunch of free stuff and gift cards, but my friends say she was just doing her job. I didn't think she was a nosy bitch. That's a wild ride from start to finish. I have many various opinions on this, and because I did share it, because someone tweeted it to me on Twitter and I quote tweeted it, there was a bit of discussion, and in a deaf Facebook group, there's a lot of discussion that was different from some of the replies I got, but then some other deaf people were quote tweeting what their own opinions as well. The general consensus from a lot of deaf people that I was saying is that, yeah, the hairstylist was just doing their job. They were just, you know, trying to keep Gemma safe. And then others were like, oh my god, hearing people, what the hell? At first I was like, oh my god, hearing people, what the hell? And then I was like listening. I was reading the other responses from various people, and I'm kind of all over the place. On one hand, I can appreciate that someone's being cautious and they care about people, and if they have a feeling that someone's being human trafficked, they care enough to make sure that they're safe. Lots of people won't do that. Lots of people will just turn away from that and not care, and that's very unfortunate. On the other hand, we really need more simple deaf awareness in this world. One thing to keep in mind is that this is all from the perspective of the hearing friend. We don't know Gemma's thoughts, and there's a lot of questions that I feel are unanswered. Okay, first of all, the hearing friend talks about how Gemma uses sign language or she uses her phone to talk with the hairstylist. So I'm wondering, did Gemma talk with the hairstylist and say she was deaf or whatever, and you know, at least try to talk to herself? Because I feel like if she's done this already during the pandemic, she should already be doing it with this hairstylist. Or did her hearing friend just kind of like play hearing savior? Okay, from all the details right here, it does really scream hearing savior complex, let me do everything for you. And you know, I don't, like, when I get my hair done, I've always gotten my hair done by myself. I've never gone with a friend, but I would be doing all the communication myself. I don't necessarily mind people helping me out, but if you're doing everything for me when I know that I can do it, my stylist is amazing. She does voice to text or writes on a notebook, you know, things like that. So I don't really need you to hover over me like I'm 5. One other thought I had was, did the hairstylist really not notice Gemma's shirt? It says Gallaudet, and a lot of people said a lot of people don't know what Gallaudet is, which is true. I mean, some people like switched at birth and thought Gallaudet was a fictional school, but it also says school for the deaf on it. So I'm like, at no point during any time before the shawl, I forget what it's called, that thing that they put, the cape thing, at no point was that seen on her shirt. But at the same time, you know, a lot of us will wear masks that say the word deaf one way or another. I have my own mask that I sell, and wearing a shirt that says deaf on it, right? And people will still talk to you through their mask, so sometimes that just does not matter. The hairstylist not realizing that, one, the waving the hands around are probably going to be some sort of sign language. I mean, I'm assuming that because Gemma and hearing friend are best friends, hearing friend probably knows some sign, if not more than some. And if you're doing this and nobody's really responding, probably means that they simply can't hear you. And I and others have had moments when we're doing our own thing. Like, I went to Whole Foods once, I have a video on this too, and I was trying to get food from the freezer or whatever, just anytime I'm around, and people are getting upset with me when they're behind me trying to get my attention, and they look extremely pissed off. There was a story about a deaf Publix employee who got punched by a hearing customer because the hearing customer was calling out and thought that the employee was ignoring her. So it's things like that where hearing people really need to keep in mind, hey, they might just be deaf. And one of the comments made about this was, well, lots of human traffickers will put kids or, you know, whoever in clothes, like deaf related clothes, so that way there's like an excuse that they don't talk, or if they're just kind of sitting there. I can understand that. And same with, like, if they're completely hovering over the person, the victim, and that they're always talking for them instead. Again, I can see why the hairstylist would think, oh, okay. Some of the comments on Reddit, or lots of the comments on Reddit, were saying that Gemma and friend should have stated that she was deaf. It's on her shirt, first and foremost. But I mean, I don't know. Like I said, we don't know if they said, if Gemma even said that Gemma is deaf. So a lot of it was putting the blame on the victim in the situation and less blame put on the hairstylist. I just think that maybe before, you know, I don't know, it's hard for me to say, because if this was a situation where somebody was actually being human trafficked, being like, well, maybe you should ask questions and wait to call the cops, because who knows what's gonna happen, right? But then what if it's too late? But like I said, there's so, hearing people tend to do a lot without figuring out someone's deaf first, like I said, actually committing violence, and calling the cops on deaf people. It can be a very bad thing. Lots of deaf people have been abused by cops, and some have been killed because cops weren't listening to the fact that somebody was deaf. Miranda rights aren't being correctly given because nobody will have an interpreter for them. And I don't know the race of these two, but also obviously if that deaf person was black or any other color other than white, that could be even worse. And of course, I'm gonna guess that nobody brought interpreters over, but I mean, I'm pretty sure the stylist didn't even say anything about like that person potentially being deaf. So I don't know. I don't know what else is going on besides what Gemma herself, or Gemma's friend, is saying. But I mean, like, if you're doing everything that an actual human trafficker would be doing, like constantly hovering over this person, I feel like even I would probably be a little bit like, is everything okay? Like, why do you keep hovering over this person? But I'm also thinking from a deaf perspective, if I were to figure out that this person was deaf, I'd just be like, why are you constantly hovering over your deaf friend? I think your deaf friend can take care of herself. Ultimately, I would really like to know Gemma's side of the story here. Did Gemma say anything about being deaf? Was she trying to have a conversation with the hairstylist? You know, I just want to know her point of view as well, because all we are getting is the point of view of the hearing friend. And with a lot of people being like, well, you should have told her that your friend was deaf, da da da. A lot of deaf people don't like to really disclose that for many reasons, but again, this is such a wild situation from start to finish. Do I think that the hairstylist should have been fired? I'm gonna leave that up to you to decide, but I do know that I would be absolutely traumatized if it was me and it was my friend, although I wouldn't let my friend hover over me constantly like that. But let's just say if that happened, I would be very traumatized if the cops are calling. I had no idea what was going on, especially since it's very likely that nobody brought interpreters over because of the situation and what the hairstylist probably told them. So to wrap it up, on one hand, again, I'm glad somebody was, you know, trying to care for this person and, you know, be worried and be like, okay, I want to make sure that this person is safe. On the other hand, I think there needs to be a little bit more like due diligence and just being like, hey, why is this person not hearing me? You know, because again, if you're trying to do stuff behind me, I'm probably not gonna hear it, and that's just because I'm deaf, not because of anything else. So definitely need more deaf awareness around here. People really need to think about the fact that, hey, deaf people exist. Well, you're welcome to leave your own thoughts down below. Do you think the hairstylist is doing your job? Do you think there's more to the story? You want to hear Gemma's point of view as well? Do you think everyone sucks here, as the general voting consensus seems to be? Leave your thoughts down below. And since this video does have a little bit of educational moments in it with deaf awareness and whatnot, feel free to share this video with the people that you know on social media, etc. so people are aware of the fact that, well, deaf people exist and sometimes they're just not responsive. Give this video a thumbs up if you would like. All of that helps the growth of the channel and the video itself. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and I will see you later.